Hi Year 10, this is Mr. Sant and this is a review of the energy and biomass in food chains and waste material from plants and animals assessment. So what we're going to do, we're going to go through each question individually and we're going to see and identify where you can get each of the marks for them. So we'll start off with the first one, so we'll look at 1A. It says, a gardener pulled up weeds and used them to start a compost heap. The compost heap soon became colonised by large numbers of earthworms and slugs. The gardener then noticed a hedgehog rooting through the compost heap, eating the earthworms and slugs. Every so often, the hedgehog stopped to scratch itself. This was because it had large numbers of fleas which fed by sucking the hedgehog's blood. So your question says, use only information from the passage to answer the following. I ask you to construct and label a pyramid of biomass for your food chain. So what you need to do for this one, you need to identify from the question what the organisms are in your food chain. So we're just going to have a quick look back for the question. So it says, a gardener pulled up weeds and used them to start a compost heap. So we know that at the start of every food chain there must be a plant, and in this case the weeds are the plant. Okay, so you've got your weeds, which should be at the base of your pyramid of biomass. Okay, so that'll be weeds. Apologies for the untidy handwriting. Okay, so we've got weeds first. It says the compost heap soon became colonised by large numbers of earthworms and slugs. Okay, so the next stage that we're going to have to do, we're going to have to add in our earthworms and slugs. However, what you need to show is that the amount of biomass decreases. So that there will be earthworms, slugs. Okay, so we've done our first two. So we've got our first two levels of our pyramid. So next, the gardener then noticed a hedgehog rooting through the compost heap, and it was eating the earthworms and slugs. So next, we need our hedgehogs, which are going to go there. Hedgehogs. And what happens is the energy gets passed on from the earthworms and slugs onto the hedgehogs. Now the reason that the hedgehogs is smaller in terms of biomass is because the numbers of hedgehogs are going to be a lot lower than the earthworms and slugs. So therefore that's going to have an impact on the overall biomass of the hedgehogs. And at the top of our chain, we need to make sure that we've got those fleas that are eating the hedgehogs. So fleas are going to be at the top there. Okay, so you need to do that for both the two marks. Okay, for question 1B, it says, gardeners put plant material onto compost heaps so that it will decay. They then put the decayed compost onto soil where they are growing their plants. Give 3 conditions which are needed for plant material to decay rapidly. So you need to link here your 3 conditions for decay, which are moisture. So the bacteria and the decomposers that are involved in the decay process need a certain amount of moisture in order to work properly. They need it to be at the right temperature. So bacteria, they usually like a temperature which is around about 35 to 40 degrees. And they also need oxygen. And they need those 3 things in order to respire effectively so that they can then go on to decompose the waste material. So you've 3 marks there, 1 for each of the points. So we've got moisture, temperature and oxygen. Okay, so we're moving on now to question 2. Sorry about the picture, but we'll go through it. It says the diagram shows a flow of energy through 1 metre squared of an ecosystem. The unit in each case is kilojoules per metre squared per year. Okay, so we've got here, this is basically just a food web. So we've got the base of our food web, which is going to be our plants. We've got the second part, which is the animals. It could be any animals. It could be, like in the last example, it could be an earthworm or something like that. We've got part C, which are the animals which are eating the animals in part B. And then D at the top is representing our mammals and birds. Okay, so that was what the food chain was trying to show you. What it brings in that we haven't seen before, we've got these parts here, F and E. Now those are just representing heat transfer to the environment, so that's going to be waste energy. So waste energy goes to the environment, and F is the energy that goes to the detritus feeders and microorganisms. So that is the energy or the nutrients that are left over when an organism dies. Okay, so we've got waste and to do with decay there, folks. Okay, so what we'll do, we will rub that off. Actually, we won't bother rubbing it off. May as well keep that there for the next bit. So the first question says, name the process in which green plants transfer solar energy into chemical compounds. I think the vast majority of people got that one. That answer for that was photosynthesis. So it's using that sunlight energy along with our water and carbon dioxide, and that's going to give us glucose. It's going to give us oxygen as well. Okay, so A part 2 says name the process in living organisms which eventually results in the transfer of heat to the environment. That, folks, was respiration. Okay, got a lot of people here saying it was combustion. No, that's wrong. It's a process in living organisms which eventually results in the transfer of heat to the environment. That is respiration. So think about it. We respire all the time, but when we're doing that, it's releasing energy, and some of that energy is transferred to the environment as heat. Okay, so that was respiration. Give 2 ways in which energy is transferred from animals to detritus feeders. So it only asks you for 2 here, but you could go. There are 3 that it suggests on the mark scheme. One way is when an animal dies, so death. Another way is through waste products. So there you're talking about your feces, you're talking about your urine. It's where those detritus feeders can get the nutrients that are locked in that waste product and in the dead animal. Okay, so feces and urine were your 2 waste products that you could have mentioned. So those are what you needed for that question there, folks. So if we move on to the next question. Okay, so if we just go up to the top here. So we're asking to identify the waste energy of mammals and birds. So just use a different colour for this so we can see it. We can see here that the energy transfer to the environment, that is our waste energy. So E is the waste energy. So for the animals and birds, which are D, 96 kilojoules per metre squared is wasted energy. We can see, you can just about make it out, but the total energy that's going to those is 120 kilojoules per metre squared. Okay, so what we need to do now is use that information to calculate the percentage of wasted energy. So the way you do this, I'll do it on this page so that we don't have to keep flicking backwards and forth. You do 96, which is your total waste energy, divide that by your total, and then times that by 100, and that should give you 80%. So for that first question, so we'll go back to it now. Okay, just zoom in a little bit so we can see it clearer. Okay, right. So this is where some people started to lose marks. So it says calculate the percentage of the energy intake of mammals and birds which is transferred to the environment. So what we're going to do quickly, we'll look back at the question, we'll identify the energy that's transferred to the environment, and we'll identify the total energy. Then we can use that to calculate the percentage. So if we go back, so for this question here, that should be 96 divided by 120 times 100 equals 80. So that's going to be 80%. Okay, a lot of people lost marks on those, and it's just simple maths, folks. We need to be able to calculate percentages. Okay, we move down to part 2. Explain why mammals and birds lose a greater percentage of their energy intake to the environment as heat than other groups of animals. You need to link this, folks, to what those animals need to do. So mammals and birds, for 1 mark, need to maintain their body temperature. Okay, those are warm-blooded organisms, folks. So what that means is they have to use the chemical reactions in their body to regulate their body temperature. So they need to maintain body temperature, And your second point for this is the reason that they lose so much of that energy is because the body temperature needs to be higher than the environment. So some of that energy that's being emitted to warm themselves up is wasted. So body temperature must be higher than the environment. Okay, that was for 2 marks. So 1 mark saying they need to maintain the body temperature, and your second mark for that bit there, so for saying that it's got to be higher than the environment. Okay, we'll move on. Okay, so this is looking back at our photosynthesis equation. So you've just got to complete the equation for plant respiration. Oh, not photosynthesis, sorry, respiration. So your equation for respiration, we need 2 things for respiration to happen. It gives us oxygen, and the other thing that we need is glucose or sugar. Okay, so glucose was needed for the mark there, but it's a type of sugar. And it comes over to our waste products, which are over here. And we've got carbon dioxide, which is one waste product. That's wasted. Energy is our useful product that we get from the plants get from the reaction. So they respire in order to create energy. And the other waste product that's actually formed in that reaction is going to be water. Okay, so a little bit of water vapour, and that links in with transpiration. Okay, so for B part 1, it says calculate the mass of carbon removed from the atmosphere each year, and it says to make sure you show you're working. Not a difficult question, folks, but once again, people losing marks on them. Okay, so we scroll up to the diagram, and you can see on the diagram the different processes that are putting carbon dioxide into the atmosphere and taking it out of there. Okay, so we've got burning fossil fuels, that's putting it into the atmosphere, so that's shown by the arrow going forward. So the arrow going forward, like this, shows it going into the atmosphere. The only 2 that are coming out of the atmosphere are photosynthesis, which accounts for 100 billion tonnes, and we've also got biological and chemical absorption, which accounts for 104 billion tonnes. So all that you need to do to get your marks for this one was to add those 2 numbers together. So we've got photosynthesis, which is 100 billion, plus biological and chemical absorption, which is 104, which gives you a total of 204 billion. So we've got 204 billion tonnes there. That was not a difficult question, folks, but a lot of people lost marks on there. You need to be making sure that you're going through and reading all of the information that's in the question. If there's a diagram, analyse it, find out what information it's showing you first before you answer anything. Okay, right, moving on. Okay, so we can see that the energy going into the atmosphere, we've got the fossil fuels being burnt, which is 5 billion. So we'll keep a track of this down here. We've got 5 plus 50 from land plant respiration, so 5 plus 50. We're not going to do photosynthesis yet because that's taking it away, so we'll do deforestation next, which is 2 billion, so plus 2. So it's removing those plants and trees so that they can't get that carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. We've got decomposition of dead organisms, that accounts for 50 billion. And finally, we have got biological and chemical emissions, which is 100 billion. So we're going to add 100 onto the end there. So in total, we have got 207 billion tonnes going into the atmosphere. Okay, 207 billion going in, 204 going out. So we'll just highlight those for you so it's easier to see. So we've got 207 going into the atmosphere by these processes here. So we've got burning fossil fuels, respiration, deforestation, decomposition, and biological and chemical emissions. And then our 2 remaining ones is what we calculated earlier, so that was our 204 billion. And the question is literally just asking us to find out what the net gain of carbon in the atmosphere is. So we'll go back to that now. So we zoom in again. Calculate the percentage of this total which is removed by the photosynthesis of land plants. So it's the same thing again, calculating percentages. So was photosynthesis, which is accounting for, I think it was 100 billion. So we've got 100 billion, we'll just put it as 100 for now, divided by the total, which was got in our last question, which was 204. To convert that to a percentage, times it by 100, and that should have given you something around about 49%. Okay, so noticing there that the energy that we're looking for goes at the top, total energy at the bottom. Then we can calculate the efficiency of that. Okay. Part 3, calculate the net gain of carbon by the atmosphere in 1 year. So for this one, we need to look back at the question and we'll come back to answer it in a second. So, turning back. Okay, so what we do now then, we have got 207 going in, 207 billion tonnes going in, and we've got 204 going out, and we just need to find the difference. So our difference there is 3 billion tonnes. Okay,